Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Lianov, and I'm the president and founder of the Global Positive Health Institute. Welcome to our podcast where we explore positive psychology, positive health, lifestyle medicine, and more. And today I'm delighted to have with us our guest and my new friend, Jill Hancock. She is a MAPP graduate, Masters of Applied Positive Psychology, who comes from a non-health background, but has worked her way to the areas of well-being. She's setting up a new nonprofit called Positive Headways that's empowering people through training and education to help them build their own well-being. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Liana, and it's really a pleasure to be here today.
I can't wait to dive in because we're going to eventually get to talk a little bit also about aging, and that's a new topic on this podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. But first, just please share with us how your journey and how you got to positive psychology and well-being.
Well, it truly was a light bulb moment for me. And I guess I'm a late starter to psychological well-being. After a varied career in marketing and running companies, I had a bit of a change of direction, and I did move to the non-profit sector. And that eventually found me in working for one of the largest mental health companies in the UK, or charities rather. And as part of working for them, I had the opportunity to go on some of their training courses. And one of the courses was on resilience. And I had this light bulb moment when we were talking about cognitive distortions. And it really was. I thought, wow, if only I'd understood or known about these concepts 20, 30 years ago, I think I would have handled my life, my relationships, my business career so much more differently, because I would have been more aware of my emotions, would have been more intelligent about them. And so that's what led me to want to learn more about psychology, and in particular, positive psychology and the psychology of well-being.
Yes, and it's wonderful that even late in life, we can have that light bulb and transform our lives. And in this case, you're transforming your life, but you're ambitious to spread this to others, and that's terrific. So tell us how you're using this first in your own life.
Okay, well, first in my own life, and then I can share the opportunities I've had professionally. Is I was fortunate to obtain a place on the University of Penn's MAPP course, and that's very much an applied course. So you are practicing the interventions on yourself. So I guess maybe I shouldn't admit to this, but I'm not someone who sits down each evening and writes their gratitude journal. What I do have, I have these permanent models stuck in my head now, and the one I probably most follow is Martin Seligman's PERMA, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and your listeners are. It's about positive emotion, finding meaning in life, positive relationships, engagement, achievement. And during the course of the day, I actively seek a PERMA moment. It could be if I'm walking, I will make a point of looking up at the sky and enjoying something that I see, or if I'm in a park, just looking at what state are we, is it spring, where are the blossoms? And I also realized, I sort of accidentally stumbled across flow before taking the course. And when I was on the course, I suddenly thought, gosh, I know now what I can do to create my moment of flow. And it is actually crafting, it's needlework, it's sewing. And I'm not some great big, sort of like, crafty person, but several years ago, I made both my daughters patchwork quilts. And I remember I was sewing away in the kitchen, and I'd look up and it would be 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was still sewing and I hadn't realised. So my really conscious effort of promoting my own positive well-being is I've now actively study textile art. And so every Tuesday I take myself off to this wonderful sort of community and create not quite very perfect pieces, but work on my textiles. So that's my flow session each week.
It's terrific because it's regularly scheduled that you can make sure to have that time of a flow, and also, of course, it sounds like there's the camaraderie as well, so the social piece, and yes, it's terrific because we've had a number of guests, and very few of them have talked about more of this artistic side of them. And art can be in many ways, and so these textile arts, it sounds amazing. So that's wonderful.
I think the interesting thing about the flow and finding something that gives you a sense of engagement and achievement, mine doesn't stop when I walk out the college I go to. It actually continues during the week. Even if it's a WhatsApp from one of the people on my course, or a delivery of some new fabrics I might be working with. So it's almost a continuation, which I think it's important to actually find something that you can recognize gives you that ability. And like I'm a latecomer on many things, I've been a latecomer on this as well.
Well, pun intended, you're weaving this into the fabric of your life.
Yes.
And that's terrific. Well, and so you are weaving it into the fabric of your life. So personally, we talked a little bit about that. Now tell us your journey professionally and what you're doing there.
Well, my background originally was marketing, and I moved into the wellbeing sector, managing an art and wellbeing centre, and then I moved back into a sort of almost like my old role for a mental health charity, and that was essentially business development, but also training. And I was very fortunate because I had so many opportunities where I saw that we could actually develop training programs to deliver in our locality. And I had the skills to do that, but not the knowledge. And that's when I started taking a sort of an academic approach to positive psychology. So I'd sit myself on a Coursera course, and then I'd write the program. So, for example, resilience, I first attended the University of Penn Certificate Resilience course on Coursera. And then that enabled me to have the sort of knowledge to write a 1 hour, 2 hour presentation for people in my local area who were frontline workers during the COVID epidemic. When COVID happened, we moved everything online, and that's when it all sort of grew. We were running mental wellbeing workshops for parents. We were running workshops for frontline workers. I even run workshops for charities like Age UK on how to keep resilient during the pandemic. So it was a great opportunity that led me to then apply for the place at Penn to actually study this topic in more depth. And that's why I want to set up my own charity, because I believe if we can give people the tools and that they can then create their own well-being. Coaching and counselling, I appreciate, serves a very good purpose. But for a lot of people, it's not financially accessible. And also, it's not necessarily a sort of a lifelong continuum. Whereas if you have the tools and the skills yourself, almost like to be your own coach, then that's something you can factor into your everyday life.
I'm an absolute believer of that, and resonate that we need to have that toolbox of various tools, and throughout our lives we pick and choose which tools are appropriate for that point in time, whatever's going on through our lives, and that these are available to us through the lifespan and 24/7, whereas there's really no really good mental well-being and overall health service that's going to be really at our fingertips in that way when it comes to looking to ourselves and what we have within and that empowerment. It's so enlightening and takes a burden off, knowing that if the world is crumbling around you, you can still look to yourself and move on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so let's dive in a little bit. I'm really looking forward to hearing. I know you did an in-depth review of the science of aging and positive psychology. And what did you find from all of that? What are the takeaway messages from your hard work in that?
Gosh, well, it opened up a personal can of worms, which I'll expand on in a minute. I think it opened up 4 key messages or 4 key lessons. The first one is the prevalence of ageism. The World Health Organization itself said it's probably the most prevalent form of discrimination in the world today. And that leads to sort of the second lesson, that there's something unique about ageism. The can of worms it opened up for me is I realise I have been ageist in my life, and the unique factor or the unique thing about ageism, it's the one group that people who are ageist, we all will eventually join that group that we've been discriminative against. So I think that's interesting. And it's also, you also end up sort of almost with a radar. I feel I'm walking around now with a radar, so that the minute someone calls me my lovely, which seems to happen increasingly, I'm thinking, are you calling me my lovely because that's what you call everyone else? Or is it because I happen to look older than you? And also I'm very much aware of a concept called gendered aging. So that as a woman, there is this feeling that almost like invisibility, whereas men become silver foxes. We don't have an equivalent standard. In fact, instead we tend to worry about, am I looking mutton dressed as lamb today? Because I'm thinking, should I wear some chunky boots or something? So there's sort of 2 sort of messages I picked up. The third one, which pertains to positive psychology, was what I feel, and academics, the academic body suggests this as well, is the deficiencies in the models for aging. Probably the one that's most followed is about 20 or 30 years old now, and that's known as successful aging. And there are critiques saying, well, that is ageist in itself, because at the heart of successful aging, it's almost about how we can stay as young and healthy as we possibly can. Now, I'm definitely not against staying healthy, and I'm not against trying to look as young as I can either. But if you're unable to stay healthy because you have, maybe certain conditions, that suddenly thinks, well, where do I fit into that model? Does that mean I'm aging unsuccessfully? If someone doesn't want to choose to still squeeze into a pair of jeans that, I'm afraid I still choose to do, does that mean they're aging unsuccessfully? Because they actually think, well, I'm quite happy in looser clothes these days and good old baggy jumpers. So it almost does. The successful aging model does sort of seem to still try to push us into trying to look younger, be younger than we actually are, and almost like trying to beat our metabolic clock or, our aging clock. And that leads on to the 4th lesson that I learned, and that's one of acceptance. And for me, aging, hitting 60, has been almost like another transitional phase. And that's where I think positive psychology and aging models can help. And I briefly refer to another model, Carol Liff's 6-factor model on well-being, which originated on looking at aging, and that model goes back to the late 1970s, early 80s. And three elements of that are about purpose, self-acceptance, and personal growth. And that's how I see positive psychology, and possibly even a model of positive aging can actually contribute to this transitional phase that we all will go through. And the interesting thing is, like the French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, she said we don't see old age as an extension. It's almost like a separate entity. And so I look back and I think, I don't see myself as I am now. I see myself as 15 years ago. I feel like I'm still I was 15 years ago, and research shows that's true. And it's almost finding this slot, or this acceptance, this self-acceptance of where do we really fit, and how can we sort of grow and develop and enjoy aging rather than fight it.
Yes, and just looking forward to our future, even as we age, is so crucial. And of course, that's going to be individual for each of us, what that positive visioning, that positive future looks like for each of us. But the key component there is that we do have something to really look forward to, whether it's with illness or disability or whatever might be going on, that's what's going to help us to thrive. And in the GPHI, I talk about that we have the illness continuum. And despite what's going on in the illness, or even then we can call the aging, the physical aging continuum, there's a whole different continuum which we can harness throughout the lifespan to go from languishing to flourishing. And that can be primary no matter what else is going on. And so this construct has been out there, and I'm hoping that we can promote that further. And there is this wonderful book that I'm just almost finished reading by Becca Levy and her research, and the book is called Breaking the Age Code, that really talks about how then that actually adds years to our lives if we can have that positive vision of aging, and let go of ageist views. And particularly, I'm glad you pointed out there's some extra difficulties for the female gender as well. And then as you were talking, what came to mind, one of the new areas in positive psychology, newish in the last 20 plus years, has been around post-traumatic growth. And as we age, we're losing something, and that's a kind of a trauma, a loss and a trauma. And the constructs and the positive psychology constructs within post-traumatic growth may really be useful tools, as we were talking in the beginning. What are the tools in that toolbox to help us thrive as we age? And I just wonder what you think of that.
Well, I think it's an excellent example, because when you think about it, we do have unique losses. We lose our parents. I'm now, sadly losing friends. It's hard to accept that, but I've lost quite a few. Particularly over the last few years. We have physical losses. I can't run anymore because I have arthritis in my knees, and also we lose our role-related losses, because ageism, is endemic, and it's organizational, it's self-directed, and it's interpersonal. And so we can start looking at other constructs for post-traumatic growth. I see things like resilience as a really important tool that we can build, and we can build resilience, and also which obviously includes optimism, but also hope, which is similar but different to optimism. And an interesting area that I'm looking at the moment, and it's directed from The Powers of Our Regrets, which is a book by Pink, and it's how can we learn from our regrets, and how can we how can we use those to actually then further grow? So I think there's an awful lot of similarities.
Yeah, I love that book, The Power of Regret. I read it just a couple of months ago, and another way of reframing the negative into the positive and moving forward. So yes, so thanks for mentioning that.
His name, I've forgotten his first name. It's literally.
Yes, I have as well. Um, um, but for the listeners, yeah, Power of Regret, I'm sure you'll find it. And so what advice do you have for our listeners who are looking to embrace positive psychology? Many of them are health professionals, but we have other listeners. They're looking to apply positive psychology in their own lives and professionally. What are some tips you can share?
I think for people who aren't in this area, I would caution against what you suddenly dive into. There's a lot of great self-help books out there, but there's also a lot of same old, same as material, which which isn't evidence-based. Whereas if you have a bona fide book, positive psychology book by some of the bigger names in the profession, that it's going to be evidence-based tools that you can follow. I also think I almost go back to how I was, some of the expressions and some of the sort of little tools you were given, or tips you were given as a child. And I think whilst I believe in self-compassion and self-love, I think we need to get it balanced. And I think we need to remember, the aspects of kindness, just the simple old tool of, thinking of other people, sometimes before ourselves. And I did this talk for an older group. It's through Age UK. And I started looking at all the little sort of expressions my mother used to use, like every cloud has a silver lining, it's a storm in the teacup, sleep on it. They are all, and I linked all these expressions to positive psychology interventions. And so, so before you leap into the self-help book, almost take a step back and think, what do I know? What's important to me? What are my values already? And how can I integrate those into my life? And in terms of professionals, I think, well, obviously, I think for health professionals, it's how can the professionals in psychological well-being link together, and vice versa, because as you know, like you, I'm a firm sort of believer in that we do have to look at our bodies and our lives holistically, and we, our mind and our body, have this close synergy. But ultimately, a lot of what we're talking about is behavior change, and a lot of the self-help books don't actually really help you with behavior change. And that is really, really hard. I love the old Mark. I'm a big Mark Twain fan. And one of his quotes, I think I've stolen it from a positive psychology book, is, it's so easy to give up smoking. I've given up many times. And that, I think that sums up behavior change. And when we talk about positive aging or living a healthy lifestyle, for most of us, that is about changing behavior, and that is very hard to do at any age.
Yeah, that's actually the reason that I got so passionate about positive psychology, because it is such a key link to the difficulties that we have with behavior change, and can propel us forward if we can find that link of positive emotions with whatever it is we're looking to achieve and maintain, it's going to be a lot easier. And that was a big aha moment when I connected those and realized, boy, I better learn a lot more about positive psychology, the power of positive emotions, especially if I'm going to be successful as a health provider and in lifestyle medicine, all of medicine. It's about and health and well-being, like you say, is about behavior change. So then peeling the layers of the onion, as they say, it comes down to, yeah, what's going to nudge us forward, and that's a very personal thing. And it has to do a lot with these kinds of constructs that are in this area of positive psychology, but now positive health and broader, the whole what we call biopsychosocial model, but it all impacts us down to, okay, what's my next step? What are the nudges inside and outside that's going to make me successful?
Yeah, I think a lot of professionals underestimate that challenge. What can you do to stop, stop having that extra cigarette, stop having that extra glass of wine, get yourself out, walk to the shops instead of drive to the shops. It's so complicated, and it's areas that I exercise, sort of all the time. It's not simply willpower, it's techniques, and those techniques can be broken down and can be integrated into one's everyday life. I know, because it's something I don't stop doing. I do something every day to try and integrate something that will help me, and soon it doesn't take long for something to become a habit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So we've mentioned a couple of resources as we're winding down this interview. What are some other resources that you'd like to leave our listeners with that get to the topic of behavior change, to the topic of positive psychology, positive health?
So I just think for anybody, my favorite one is the Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. They do this magazine, they do free courses, and it's just an excellent resource. Also Harvard, their Center for Wellbeing, they have a really good resource. So I dip into that both on a personal level, but also on a professional level. On a professional level, I really like it's positivepsychology.com, which is a really good resource. Yes. Lots of material. And I'm still very much, I'm quite an analytical person, and it touches on my earlier points about advice, and I said be careful of a lot of the self-help material. A lot of self-help material has just been rewritten and remarketed from evidence, scientific evidence-backed interventions. But usually my first two will always be good old Google Scholar if I'm looking at a particular topic, because I'd like to see, well, where's the research first. So they're my main resources that I tap into.
I echo those. I use those on a regular basis as well. So thanks for re-emphasizing them. So as we close, is there one little piece of advice, single piece of advice you have for us?
I coming from a personal level is be open-minded. If you're skeptical, try and not be skeptical about these tools that I know have helped me along the way. And whether skepticism is something that's more UK centric rather than US centric, I'm not sure. But even now, I do, sometimes when I talk to people about what I'm doing, and oh, they'll mention, oh, you're teaching us to be happy, are you? This is not about happiness. This is about understanding what's going on in our heads and how we can actually be the drivers or the driver of what's going on. And actually, the one last thing I would recommend is, and it's something I'm doing all the time, is dipping into the neuroscience behind this topic as well, because there's just so much that we're learning that actually is endorsing positive psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have so much more to learn there. It's fairly complex. But yes, well, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for joining us as a guest on our GPHI podcast, Jill Hancock. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for joining this podcast. Hopefully you'll check out some of our other podcast interviews, and please subscribe to our channel, and hope to see you again soon. In the meantime, be well. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.